You've heard this melody before. But did you know it echoes the void he carries? Satoru Gojo was the strongest sorcerer alive, the closest thing to divinity Jujutsu society had ever seen, until he wasn't. After his death, Gege Akutami gave us a rare confession. Gojo didn't die because he was weak. He died because he was confident, too confident that his infinity was untouchable, that Mahoraga was the only key Sukuna could use to bypass it. He never imagined Sukuna had another answer, a hidden move that would pierce even the world itself. But let's stop there, because there's something else hidden in plain sight, something often overlooked: Gojo's theme. If I am with you. This piece doesn't just sound powerful, it is power. A layered, evolving melody that mirrors every aspect of Gojo's ability, and perhaps his downfall. And like his technique, it begins with infinity, the neutral form of limitless, a passive defense that makes Gojo untouchable by slowing down anything that approaches him. In JJK Manga Chapter 14, Gojo explains it to Jogo. I'm not stopping you, it's more like you're slowing down the closer you get. The closer Jogo gets, the more space stretches, until motion becomes almost meaningless. It's not a wall. It's a trap made of time and space itself. And this, right here, is the sound of that trap. The theme is composed in C major, a key known for its solemn and emotional depth, sometimes used to express happiness. Other times, it paints grandeur, epic, almost divine.
C major, sopranos and altos in thirds, altos on C, sopranos above.
And some other times, it carries a melancholic undertone.
And in my hour of darkness, she is standing right in front of me.
But Gojo's theme is neither one nor the other. It's both, and more. It begins with a simple loop, 4 notes, F, A, B, C. These notes are not common notes. In fact, all of them are written in the treble clef, forcing the left hand to play an octave higher. This means that when playing or composing a musical piece for piano, the left hand usually plays in the bass clef, which places it in the lower, graver section of the piano. But in some cases, the left hand plays in the treble clef, meaning that the notes used are higher pitched. Why is this important? Because this subtle shift gives the loop its elevated, ethereal quality. Almost like a harp. And as we know, harps are often associated with angels or gods, and that's who Gojo is, a being so powerful, even he compares himself to Buddha. So if this loop sounds divine, it's because it's meant to. It repeats changing notes, creating new variations of itself. Then, something changes, a new layer emerges, a single shy note played as the highest B note it has played until now. That note stays for 9 full bars, like unnoticed. Almost forgotten. But it's not just there for color. It waits. It evolves, until suddenly, it's no longer background. It becomes the melody itself. The loop, now transformed, is no longer just music. It's a metaphor, a musical representation of infinity, a phrase that shifts ever so slightly, never still, never stopped. Subtle variation. Just like Gojo's curse technique, when Toji first appeared, Gojo had to toggle his infinity on and off. Later, he maintained it passively. Then he even used it offensively to destroy Hanami, increasing its force with the smallest of tweaks. And like the theme, Gojo refines how infinity behaves. A loop, a system, Eventually, the loop becomes the harmony, the foundation. The melody is now just the tip of something deeper. It begins with an F major arpeggiated chord. Major chords are normally a symbol of light, warmth, or stability. But here, it's warped. It changes between major and minor keys, generating tension within the chords. The same B note, the one that waited, the one that shifted, now seeps into the chord, twisting its meaning, turning comfort into complexity, stability into tension. Gojo, too, is that contradiction. A protector with godlike power, but also a man slowly sinking beneath the weight of it. It doesn't leap into melody. It hesitates. It lingers. Then it crawls, walks, and finally runs. Timid steps that trace the path of a reluctant destiny. This isn't just music, it's Gojo himself, drawn into a role he never asked for. The strongest, the curse, the honored one. A path lined with praise and power, but also fear, isolation, and unbearable loneliness. Even Gojo, especially him, has doubts. Doubts that were born the day Toji Fushiguro pierced through his infinity. The technique that defined him. The concept this entire theme is built on. Toji didn't just injure Gojo. He shattered his myth. He proved that the divine can bleed, that his infinity has an edge, that perhaps Gojo is not untouchable, and the damage didn't end with him. Toji took Riko Amanai, the girl Gojo had sworn to protect, and soon after, he lost Geto, not to death, but to something worse, a transformation, a fracture, a friend turned ghost, to be the strongest and still lose the people who matter most. That leaves a wound no cursed technique can heal, and the music knows it. After repeating that questioning passage multiple times, something shifts in the third part of the piece. Our ostinato, an evolving loop that started the theme and gradually became the harmonic foundation, now transforms again. It enters an endless cycle, becoming the answer to the previous questions raised in the piece. The repetitive arpeggio, once familiar, now solidifies into chords that carry the beginning of an answer to Gojo's own dilemmas. But even here, something vital is still missing. As the melody continues to question, this time from the shifting ostinato, amidst major tonalities and dissonant notes that evoke a sense of ominousness, an answer finally emerges. Both musical phrases, both motifs, now engage in a kind of conflict, or more accurate, a dance. It's as though they are two equal and yet opposing forces, constantly rotating, defining one another, and ultimately becoming more powerful through their relationship. In essence, the answer was always within Gojo. After Toji defeated him on the verge of death, discovered his cursed energy core, giving him the ability to multiply cursed energy and convert it into positive energy. One force feeds the other. Just as Gojo, full of doubts, finally reaches a resolution. On one hand, we have the strongest sorcerer, egocentric, confident, emotionally detached. On the other, we have the man, burdened by the loneliness that power brings. At this point, the theme, at first seeming like a battle between competing melodies, reveals itself as a dance of assimilation. This dynamic mirrors Gojo's internal conflict and narrative development. At first, we see Gojo as a figure focused solely on strength, disconnected from emotion, dismissing the weak for their inability to understand his superiority. Ironically, it is only through Geto's transformation, the death of Amanai, and his defeat at the hands of Toji that Gojo experiences his reality check. He realizes that he is not solely the untouchable godlike sorcerer he once believed himself to be. Yet in this revelation, he also realizes that he is not entirely human either. He is both. Just as red is an inversion of blue, these two aspects of Gojo mirror each other. Blue is attraction, the gathering force. Red is repulsion, a force of rejection. Gojo must reconcile these opposites within himself, accepting that he is both the strongest sorcerer and a human capable of feeling, making mistakes, and experiencing loss. Satoru Gojo is the perfect blend of both, absolute power within human emotions, and how the two must converge and coexist in order to reach the highest point, both as a human and as a sorcerer. From a narrative perspective, this is something essential that actually makes Satoru Gojo stronger and greater than Sukuna himself. And yes, it's true that Sukuna is officially the strongest sorcerer of all, but if we think about it, how real is that truly?
ここと上の連中 全員殺してしまおうか。
Think about it. Even Sukuna died, according to what was said at the end of the manga. In the end, once the Sukuna conflict is resolved, only the myth will remain. But with Satoru Gojo, it's different, because even though he lost to Sukuna in battle, he didn't truly lose overall. On the contrary, he won the greatest battle the world of Jujutsu has ever faced, greater than any of Kenjaku's curses, a battle even Sukuna fought and lost, the battle against change. At the beginning of the film Jujutsu Kaisen 0, Satoru makes a comment that hinted at his true intentions and mindset for the future. A bunch of detestable old geezers. I don't want to end up like them. So, I'll be careful. Later, in chapter 11 of the JJK manga, during a conversation with Ijichi, Gojo tells him that he has a dream. He mentions that the higher-ups in the Jujutsu Society are old and corrupt. In Gojo's words, it's full of stubborn conservatives, nepotism, arrogant idiots, and just plain morons. A bunch of rotten people. He says he wants to change that. Gojo's dream is to reform the Jujutsu world from the ground up, but he doesn't want to do it by killing all the higher-ups, because then new ones would just take their place. That's why he became a teacher, to gather allies who can help him achieve his dream at its roots. That's Gojo accepting his weakness and turning it into a strength. That is the dance of his two poles. Opposing forces that, despite their contrast, are both part of him. Accepting that even with all his power, wealth, and influence, he cannot fulfill his dream of cleansing the Jujutsu world of corruption alone is what made him immortal and the strongest through his students. Up to this point, we've seen Gojo's initial mindset, an endless cycle filled with doubt, only to eventually accept his duality. This duality is represented on several levels, narratively, visually, and musically. We see it in his actions, in his powers, and in his musical theme, that greatness that sets him apart from Sukuna and his so-called grand victory. Gojo embodies the idea of recognizing one's limits despite incredible abilities and choosing to work with others to lead real change. But that change doesn't come alone. Even after having accepted and integrated both sides of his duality, becoming stronger in terms of power and more mature in terms of character development, finally having people he can trust, something is still missing. One final step is needed to fully consolidate what we can now confidently call absolute power. And how does absolute power sound? It sounds like this. The final part of the theme explodes with a wide palette of colors and tonalities. It doesn't just modulate the key, that is, it changes the scale from the original, but it also preserves characteristics present throughout the piece, such as arpeggios and the ominous tone. And if we look again at the score, the entire final passage consists of arpeggiated chords, once more referencing the harp, evoking that divine sensation. But unlike the beginning, this time, they are full chords, no timid or hidden notes within the harmony. They shine with all their power, sounding boldly after a significant pause in the theme, emphasizing their impact even more, and it all stems from the two musical phrases in the third section. The two sides of Gojo, the sorcerer and the man, the red and blue, both represented in the theme as absolute power. We could argue that by combining both factors, we could symbolically see purple in the musical theme, but this part of the theme represents much more than that. It's not only Gojo's power in terms of cursed energy output, but also Gojo's ability to influence and penetrate deep into the hearts of his students and others, as he did with Amanai and Ijichi. Not only did it help him grow as a sorcerer, but as a human one who cares for his students and wants to change the world he belongs to. That is absolute power, a power that only the enlightened can understand. Those who, despite all their power and misfortunes, choose to help and build rather than destabilize and destroy by inheriting their path that leads to the greatness of the Jujutsu Society's stability, just as Gojo's path led him to victory. A victory that is not material, but deeper. A spiritual victory that led to a change in the world's rules. One where everything and everyone once relied on a single person, Gojo, now relies on every individual within the world of sorcery. It is an ascent, a spiritual ascent that elevates Gojo to a higher status, even above Sukuna. And Gojo still lives, in the teachings he left to Ayuda, in the world of sorcery, taking a step toward change. Even at the level of abilities, he has been surpassed, not on an individual level, but collectively. This is made clear several times throughout the story. Urame mentions that Hikari's reverse curse technique regeneration far exceeds that of Sukuna and even Satoru. The narrator states that Higuruma Hiromi has a talent comparable to Gojo Satoru, and Gojo himself mentions in chapter 261 that if Yuta comes from the Fujiwara and Sugawara bloodlines, then he is even more blessed than Gojo himself in terms of cursed energy, and that if he doesn't surpass him, it would be embarrassing for someone with his talent and lineage's blessing. This gives confidence to, at least for me, what I could call his closest student. In the end, we can be clear about one thing. The musical theme, If I Am With You, is not just a piece of music added to give emotional weight to a scene. Well, yes, it does serve that purpose, but it also has a deep connection to Gojo, showcasing his progress and development through each of its parts. Just like a piece of musical art composed for eternity, even though its composers may have passed, their works remain tied to the world as an intrinsic part of it, ensuring that the legacy of these individuals lives on forever. And just like a musical piece that can be listened to and revived after centuries, Gojo is a legacy that stays alive through generations.